2002 PT Cruiser thermostat replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive. I'm going to walk you through that process. So the first thing we need to do is get this upper plenum intake out off. So I'm going to start by popping the clips off the air cleaner, popping that off. Unplug the air temp sensor and take the hose clamp off here and remove the air boot. On the connector for the air temp sensor, you got to move the little red clip here. You got to slide it back, and then you can push the clip underneath and pull the sensor off. So that's what it'll look like when the air cleaner's off. So now we're going to unplug the TPS sensor, the idle air control motor sensor. Disconnect the vacuum line here. We're going to unplug the map sensor here, and the same thing, it's got the little red tab. You're going to pull it backwards like that, and then right behind it is this squeeze tab. You're going to squeeze it and pull it off. You're also going to need to pop out the little wire loom in a couple spots, so go ahead and remove those. And then once you get that done, you go ahead and remove the 14mm bolt that's here, right underneath the opening of the throttle body here. Remove that bolt here. And then on the back side, my car has an EGR valve, so you need to remove the bolts here going to this tube. Go ahead and remove both of those, and there's going to be a gasket behind it, and it may want to fall out, and so you may want to, as you take it out, you may want to catch it. So after getting the EGR tube unbolted, next is you're going to pop off the vacuum hose that goes to the brake booster. So you pop that off here, and then on the valve cover there's a vent hose that goes to the PCV valve. You're going to pop that off right here, and then you're going to pop this hose off here right next to the brake booster vacuum hose. Pop that one off too. Now there's two ways you can go about this. You can take this cover off and unhook the throttle cables and take it off, or you can do what I'm going to try to do, which is take the intake plenum bolts out and leave the throttle body hooked up, and I'm just going to flip the intake over into this area over here and out of my way. I like to do stuff like that, try to take off the least amount of things as I possibly can. It speeds the job up. So that's how I'm going to attempt to do this. I'm not 100% positive when I get it over here if there's going to be enough room for me to work, and if there's not, then I'll just go ahead and disconnect the cable and then go ahead and just remove the whole plenum off. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the 8mm bolts here at the front of the plenum here. So now that the 8mm bolts are off on the front, you can lift it up and kind of flip the manifold out of your way. You can even put it up here on the cowling fuse, because I didn't disconnect the throttle body. And now we can get to our thermostat and change the upper hose. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pop off the vent hose here. Go ahead and remove the 10mm bolt here and the one right behind it there, and take off the upper hose. You need a bucket underneath to catch the coolant as it leaks out. If your vehicle's too low to put the coolant bucket underneath, what you can do is just put a little floor jack it up over on the corner. I'm just using my rack right here just to lift up the corner here just enough to slide the coolant bucket underneath. So now once you got that done, go ahead and remove those bolts like I told you in the upper hose. I'm also going to, before I get started tearing this apart, I'm going to stuff some rags in the intake manifold here, so that way when I'm working on all this stuff here, nothing falls inside the intake and gets sucked into the engine. So you can either clean this off and put masking tape, or put some rags or something, just block the ports so nothing falls inside. Now that I got the thermostat housing itself off, now you can go ahead and pull out the thermostat here, and then after that you'll clean up all your mating surfaces. So now that I got my thermostat out, it just has a rubber O-ring that holds the thermostat, but somebody has done this job before and they put silicone. I don't like this repair. I found that this type of repair with the silicone and the rubber gaskets, they tend to leak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean all the silicone off really good. I'm going to double check to make sure the surface is not corroded or pitted, and if it's good, when I put it back together, I'll just use the new rubber O-ring in the thermostat housing and bolt it back up. And also I wanted to point out, see how this hole right here where the bolt fills up is full of coolant. You want to blow that coolant out of there, because what will happen is when you go to put the new bolt in there with the coolant in there, the water won't compress, and it'll actually break the ear of the thermostat housing off. It'll break it off. So blow that out completely to make sure it's dry. And you can use like a turkey baster or whatever if the coolant's still full here, and you can suck a little bit of coolant out so it drops the level. And so clean that up, and then you're gonna. So now that you got the thermostat housing all cleaned up, what you're gonna do is take the actual housing itself. That's the lower housing. This is the upper housing. So now that you got the lower housing cleaned up, and now you're gonna take your upper housing, and you can take your new thermostat. And so when the thermostat goes in there, it's going to look like it's downwards like that. So you want to make sure you don't try to install it upside down. Okay, so now there's this little rubber hash mark right here, and it lines up the hash mark on the thermostat housing. So when you put it in there, it's going to look like that. And also the little vent, right there is going to be pointing towards the hash mark. So then you can flip it over. You'll just flip it over like that and put it in this spot. Now that it's flipped into a spot, you can go ahead and start the bolts, and you can tighten the bolts. And so you want to just kind of tighten it like snug it down here, and then snug the other side down. And then after you get the bolts started, you can torque them down to 10 foot-pounds. It's actually 9 to 10 foot-pounds. So a cool tip to get these bolts started is to take your socket like this, and then take a piece of paper like this here, and stuff it in here over the socket like this, and then you take the bolt and push the paper and the bolt into the socket. Look like that, and then you can take the socket and hold it upside down, and it won't fall off. And now you can run it down there and start your bolt, and then you do the same thing with the other bolt and start it, and then go ahead and torque them down to 9 foot-pounds. So now that you've got your thermostat housing bolted back up, you can go ahead and put your vent line back on, or overflow hose back on. Go ahead and put on your upper radiator hose. I went ahead and replaced this since it runs under the intake, and it's just easier. You may want to do the same. So I'm going to go ahead and put my upper hose on. Then after that, we'll put the intake back on. Reinstall the intake manifold. But before we do that, we need to change the O-rings, gaskets here, and wipe the surface clean. So these are the new O-rings that are going to mount into the intake, the upper plenum here. I wanted to show you the part number for it. This is a Felpro part number. Okay, now that we got our intake manifold gaskets changed out, we need to wipe down the surface and remove our rags from the lower intake. And then we need to check make sure that our EGR tube gasket here is in good shape. If it's in bad shape, I recommend replacing it. So now we're ready to go ahead and flip our intake manifold over and go ahead and put it back on. So when we do this, we want this hole to stab kind of first like this around the intake, around the EGR tube, and then swing the manifold down. Let's see if I can do it with one hand here. So you're gonna kind of stab the hole in first like this, like that, and once you got it stabbed, then you can put the manifold down here, and then you may give this a little wiggle, make sure it's lined up. And then you can, after you get that situated where you're happy with it, you can go ahead and start your 8mm bolts through here. And you're going to snug it up from here, 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 and then here. And then after that, then you can torque it one final time at 10 foot-pounds on the front. After that's secure, then you can go ahead and put the EGR tube. You want to put the bracket on. You may spin it up or down. It looks like the long side goes towards the driver's side and the short side goes towards the passenger side. Go ahead and start those 2 bolts and tighten the EGR tube down, and that's going to be also at 10 foot-pounds, 9 to 10 foot-pounds. Okay, now that you've got the EGR tube tightened up, now you can go ahead and install your brake booster hose. Mount that, and then the vacuum line, the purge line here, you can go ahead and remount that. Go ahead and remount the vacuum line here, so you got your purge valve, your vacuum line hooked up. You can go ahead and route your wires back through and put the little wire looms, plug them back into the tabs, and go ahead and plug your map sensor back in. You're also going to go ahead and plug in your throttle body, your idle air control molder, and then after that you can go ahead and plug in the vent line for the PCV. Plug that on the intake. Once that's plugged in, you can go ahead and take the 13 millimeter that went underneath the throttle body here and start that bolt and tighten that down. Now that that's all tightened up, we can go ahead and put our air cleaner back on. So these little holes right here on the back of the air cleaner will hook over these little ears. So you'll hook them over, and then you'll snap your little clips on here and put the boot over the throttle body and plug in your air temp sensor. And make sure you push that lock tab after you plug it in. Push the lock tab back inwards to lock it back and secure it. Now that we got the intake all back on, now we need to fill the car with the proper coolant. So now that you got it filled up with coolant, you want to run it until the thermostat opens. So on this upper hose here, you'll feel it it'll be cold, and all of a sudden it'll get warm, and you'll know that it opened up. And also most likely the coolant will probably bubble down and drop, the level will drop, and you have to keep topping it up. And once the thermostat is open, you also want to run it long enough to make sure that the cooling fans here underneath operate, but you want to check it with the air conditioning off and the heater off also. And then once you know the cooling fans have run and the thermostat has opened, you can go ahead and put your radiator cap back on, and that'll complete the job of replacing the thermostat.